For some family. I got to bring Leighton back to the doctor on Tuesday.
Back then, you show up after files and there was a list. You have to read your social security number and there was your name. And they just blew their face off. There wasn't anywhere you could use that information. Now there's places you can use that information readily. Yeah. But man, that's how we checked our
Good.
Yeah,
Finally got the TNC now. I used to tell him physical therapy.
So you, okay, you're gonna be
He's throwing, he's been throwing on the bus.
storage is for the softball. It's still open. By the way, you can.
We're gonna see me.
The PTSD's coming, I know that much.
Oh, God bless you.
I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Calcasieu Parish Police Jury for Thursday, July 6, 2023. If you would, take a moment and silence your cell phones. If you wish to speak on any item that's on the agenda tonight, I ask that you fill out one of the little blue cards that you'll find at the desk up front there. Once you get it filled out, you can hand it to anybody here at the staff desk. We're going to have the invocation and pledge of allegiance by Mr. Tremonti. Please stand.
Dear Lord, thank you for allowing us to gather tonight and get here safely with the weather. Please allow us to make good decisions for the people of our parish. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, Madam Secretary.
Yes, sir. Mr. Abshire?
Here.
Mr. Angelpont?
Here.
Mr. Barris?
Here.
Mr. Barty?
Here.
Vice President Brame was unable to attend this evening. Mr. Burley?
Here.
Mr. Guillory?
Here.
Mr. Hayes?
Here.
Mr. Lewis?
Here.
Mr. Markentile was also unable to attend. Mr. Richard?
Here.
Mr. Smith?
Here.
Mr. Stelly?
Here.
Mr. Tremonti?
Here.
And President Landry.
Here.
You do have a quorum.
Thank you, Ms. Kathy. Thank you, Mr. Tremonti, as well. Item 1 is public hearing at 5:45. We'll come back to that. We're going to go to 5B. 5B, adopt a resolution approving a cooperative endeavor agreement between the police jury and Tony Mancuso, Sheriff of Calcasieu Parish, for financial assistance related to the purchase of an emergency response and rescue vehicle which will be utilized during emergency or disaster events that impact the parish. I have a motion by Mr. Bear, second by Mr. Burley. Is there any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you, Sheriff, for being here. Sure, go ahead.
You know, I'm on the way out, but I want to tell you thank you for everything that y'all have done. We've had some tough times together as a jury and a police agency, and y'all have always been there for me. I know we've had squabbles and closed-door arguments, but we've always done what's best for the parish and what's best for the citizens of this parish, and this is another example. So I appreciate that working relationship that we've had, and I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. I appreciate everything. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff Mancuso. Mr.
While you're here,
Anderson.
Sheriff, we want to thank you for your service. It's not an easy job being a sheriff, I can imagine. Your phone rings all the time, but you've represented and taken care of the citizens of this parish very well, and we appreciate you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank y'all.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to go back to 2A. Adopt an ordinance to levy the following ad valorem maintenance tax millages for the year 2023 as submitted by the parish tax assessor. Boy, y'all are excited about that one, aren't you? Okay, we got to do it, whether you want it or not. How about we're going to have a motion by Mr. Eddie Earl Lewis, Jr.
Go ahead, Eddie.
And a second by Mr. Tremonti. Is there any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. 2B, adopt an ordinance to levy the following ad valorem general purpose tax millages for the year 2023 as submitted by the parish tax assessor. We got a motion by Mr. Barty, a second by Mr. Anderpont. Is there any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. 3A, appearance by Mr. Brad Gilry, candidate for 14th Judicial District Court Judge. If you would, state your name and address for the record, please. It can be a work address, would be fine.
Brad Gilry, 940 Ryan Street, Lake Charles, Louisiana. A little bit of background about myself. I grew up here in Lake Charles. My family owned and operated Skate City on Nelson Road, and so I worked there from the time I was in elementary school until I was through college. It's where a lot of people know me from, but I attended Prairie Lake, SJ, and Barb, so I grew up here. After that, I went to McNeese. Then I was a police officer for 2.5 years with the Lake Charles Police Department, and then went to law school in downtown Houston. After practicing there, doing a little bit of family law and a lot of personal injury, my family decided it was time to move back, and I conceded and moved back to Lake Charles. So in 2009, I started practicing here. Since being here, well, first of all, I'm licensed in Texas, Louisiana, and Mississippi, so I've practiced throughout Texas, a lot of areas in Louisiana, and very small amounts in Mississippi. But since coming back, I've been doing mostly family law. I've been the president of the McNeese Alumni Association for 4 terms, and thankfully that term has ended now. Also president for the Southwest Louisiana Bar Association and the family law section as well. After moving back to Lake Charles, I've primarily been doing family law. I've represented several of the people in here. But anyway, the reason I'm wanting to do this, because if anyone's dealt in the family law system, it's a flawed system. There's no reason that it should take you 1.5 to 2 years to try your case. If you go right down the road to Allen Parish, it's a lot smaller docket, but you're in and out in 4 months. And the most troubling time in your life, it's taken you 2 years to get through the system. And there's ways to prevent that, and that's what I'm hoping to do. I'm a certified mediator. I've been mediating family law cases appointed by the court for quite a few years. I've also been appointed by the court as a special master to hear family law matters. So besides that, I'm married to Laura Guillory, been married for over 25 years. We got 4 children, 2 of which are adopted. So I've seen both sides of the street. I've been a litigant and I've been a participant in the court system, so I know how it works on both sides. I'm not doing this for a promotion because Lord knows this is a pay cut for me, but if there's someone that's going to fix it, I want to fix it. There's nobody else doing it. So first and foremost, my goal is to get the time delays down big time. We need to get that cut in half at least. Second thing, if you get held in contempt of court for not paying your child support, you shouldn't get a slap on the wrist once, twice, 3 times. At some point in time, you should pay the price, and then you start paying your child support. If you go to Jeff Davis, you get held in contempt for not paying your child support, you go straight to jail. So my clients know if you lose, you're going to jail. So what happens? They pay their child support. That's a problem here. If you get caught committing perjury in Calcasieu Parish in family court, nothing happens. That's a problem. So people lie with impunity on the stand, and there's nothing happens to them. I want to change those things. And finally, family court is not just for divorces. It deals with community stability, enhances public safety, and dealing with the juveniles. If we don't get them taken care of when they're juveniles, and they're going to be burdening the system later on in the future. So these kids need compassion, but they also need help. And the families aren't there most of the time to back them up. So I think our judges do a pretty good job with those juveniles, but that's a very important part of it. So I'd be honored to be your next family law judge. I'd appreciate your support and your consideration. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. King. Is there any questions? Mr. Smith?
What division are you trying to run for?
Judge Bradbury's open seat.
Okay. All right. Another question, just kind of curious about, you mentioned about family court deals with juveniles?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So how would you feel about like juvenile bonds? How would you rate those compared to adult bonds?
Well, part of the problem with the juvenile bonds is who's posting those bonds. So I don't think they should be the same as adult bonds in most of the cases, because you have a juvenile and you got parents that are trying to post the bonds, and a lot of times the parents aren't even there. So it can't be the same. I don't believe it can be the same. It's got to be lower in most cases. Now, some cases it's going to require a high bond no matter what, but in most cases I don't think it's going to be the same as adult bonds.
Okay. All right, thank you. That was it.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Is there any other questions for Mr. Gilroy? Thank you, sir. Good luck to you.
Thank you.
Let's see. 3B, there's no way you're going to finish that in 6 minutes, is it? Yeah, I didn't think so. We're going to come back to that after number 1, and we'll just see how far we can get in 6 minutes. 4A, adopt a resolution approving a professional engineering services contract for the South Ward 4 Gravity Sewer Trunk Main Corridor Study Project. I have a motion by Mr. Burley, second by Mr. Bears. Is there any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. 4B, adopt a resolution approving a temporary construction servitude agreement for the Gum Cove Road Bridge Replacement Project. Got a motion by Mr. Bears, second by Mr. Anderpont. Is there any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. 4C, adopt a resolution approving a servitude agreement for from the police jury to Venture Global CP Express LLC for future pipeline improvements along the intercoastal waterway. I have a motion by Mr. Bear, second by Mr. Barty. Is there any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. 4D, adopt ordinances approving the purchases of the following properties through funding received from the FEMA Hazard Mitigation Grant Program, specifically 1380 Pin Oak Drive in Lake Charles, number 1, and number 2, 4301 Dean Street in Lake Charles, number 3, 7120 Beauclair Drive in Lake Charles. Had a motion by Mr. Smith, second by Mr. Richard on all bullets. Is there any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. 5A, approve the minutes of the regular meeting of the police jury dated June 1st, 2023. I have a motion by Mr. Barty, second by Mr. Hayes. Is there any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. 5B, adopt a resolution approving a cooperative endeavor agreement between the police jury and Tony May. Oh, we already did that. Sorry, guys. All right, 5C, adopt a resolution approving a call by Ward 5 Fire Protection District Number 1 for an election to be held on Saturday, November 18th, 2023, to renew, levy, and collect a special tax of 6 mills for a period of 10 years. We have a motion by Mr. Tremonti, a second by Mr. Burley. Is there any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries.
Move on 6A.
6A, approve an application for liquor and beer permits. Mr. Crane and his staff recommends that one new application be approved. I have a motion by Mr. Anderpont, second by Mr. Richard. Is there any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. 7A, adopt a resolution approving the assignment of Iberia
Move on
Bank
7A.
to First Horizon Bank in accordance with the parish's fiscal agent banking services contract through April 2024. I have a motion by Mr. Stelly, a second by Mr. Burley. Is there any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. 8A, adopt the resolution approving a grant agreement for the prior year, 2023, and fiscal year 2024 Workforce Innovations and Opportunity Act Title I funding allocation. I have a motion by Mr. Geary, second by Mr. Lewis. Is there any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries.
Move on 9A.
9A, approve payment for all current invoices. Got a motion by Mr. Anderpont, second by Mr. Burley. Is there any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. 9B, adopt a resolution on
9B.
bids for Clearfield Ranch subdivision water line installation project. The staff recommends the bid of NCMC LLC and the amount of $1,085,000 be accepted. Got a motion by Mr. Stelly, second by Mr. Tremonti. Is there any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. 9C, adopt a
Move on
resolution
9C.
accepting mosquito control hurricane repairs project as substantially complete. We have a motion by Mr. Hayes, a second by Mr. Lewis. Is there any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries.
Move on 9D.
9D, advertise for bids for the Moss Gully Improvements Project Task 2. Got a motion by Mr. Richard, second by Mr. Burley. Is there any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. You've been waiting a while on that one, hadn't you? 9E, advertise for requests for proposals for community partners in education, employment, and other services.
So move.
Anyone? Mr. Gabb, we'll take your motion. All right, who do we got? We got Mr. Smith, a motion by Mr. Smith, a second by Mr. Lewis. Is there any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. 10A, Community Center and Playground District Number 1, Award 6. These are all board appointments for various boards and districts. We have the reappointment of Mr. Joshua Neal. Got a motion by Mr. Richard, second by Mr. Burley. Is there any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. 10B, Community Center and Playground District Number 2 of Ward 4. And we have a motion by Mr. Tremonti to appoint Mr. Don Martin. Is that your motion,
Yes,
sir?
sir.
And a second by Mr. Anderpont. Is there any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. 10C, Community Center and Playground District Number 3 of Ward 7.
Reappoint.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Barris to reappoint Ms. Crystal Eastwood, and a second by Mr. Burley. Is there any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. 10D, Community
Move
Center
on
and Playground
10D to
District Number
reappoint.
4 of Ward 1. Have a motion by Mr. Richard to reappoint Ms. Connie Hoffpower, and a second by Mr. Tremonti. Is there any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. 10E, Community Center and Playground District Number 5 of Ward 5. I have a motion to reappoint Ms. Catherine Barks by Mr. Burley and a second by Mr. Barty. Is there any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. 10F,
Move to
Community
reappoint
Center and
Jason Leonard.
Playground District Number 7 of Ward 2. Want to have a motion by Mr. Stelly to reappoint Mr. Jason Leonards and a second by Mr. Tremonti. Is there any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. 10G is Consolidated Gravity Drainage District Number 2, and we need a motion to approve as reflected on the agenda, which the purpose of this is to stagger the appointments. As you all know, I have a motion by Mr. Hayes, a second by Mr. Geary on 10G. Is there any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. 10H, Recreation
60
District
days.
Number 1 of Ward 8. We have the appointment of Mr. Brandon James Perkins to be deferred for 60 days. I have a motion by Mr. Stelly, a second by Mr. Barty. Is there any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Number 11 is just an advice item, and now we'll go back. It is now 5:47, so we will go back to number 1. Again, if anyone showed up late. If you're here for one of these condemnations, we ask that you fill out one of the blue cards that you find there at the front of the room. Once you get it filled out, you need to turn it in to anyone here at the staff desk. I guess we're good. Okay, 1A, 1268 and a half East Lecty Road in Moss Bluff.
Move to condemn.
Second.
Is there anyone in the audience here to speak on 1A, 1268 and a half East Lecty Road in Moss Bluff? Okay, I got a motion by Mr. Richard, a second by Mr. Burley to condemn and remove in 30 days. Is there any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. 1B, 1456 Joe Miller Road in Moss Bluff. Is there anyone in the audience here to speak on 1B, 1456 Joe Miller Road in Moss Bluff? I have a motion by Mr. Richard, second by Mr. Burley to condemn and remove in 30 days. Is there any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. 1C,
Move to condemn.
1037
Second.
San Juan Street in Moss Bluff. Is there anyone in the audience here to speak on 1C, 1037 San Juan Street in Moss Bluff? Got a motion by Mr. Richard, second by Mr. Stelly, to condemn and remove in 30 days. Is there any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. 1D, 1027 Clark Road in Moss Bluff.
Second.
Is there anyone in the audience here to speak on 1D, 1027 Clark Road in Moss Bluff? Got a motion by Mr. Richard, second by Mr. Tremonti. Is there any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. 1E,
Move to condemn.
north of
Second.
322 Goodman Road in Lake Charles. Is there anyone in the audience here to speak on 1E, north of 322 Goodman Road in Lake Charles? Got a motion by Mr. Smith, second by Mr. Stelly, to condemn and remove in 30 days. Is there any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. 1F, 124 Balboa Street in Lake
Move to
Charles.
condemn.
Second.
Is there anyone in the audience here to speak on 1F, 124 Balboa Street in Lake Charles? Got a motion by Mr. Smith, second by Mr. Geary to condemn and remove in 30 days. Is there any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. 1G, 430 Chaffins Road in Lake Charles. Is there anyone in the audience to speak on 1G, 430 Chaffins Road in Lake Charles? Is it Chaffins? Chaffins. I was close. I thought I was off on that.
Second.
It's actually in Iowa, isn't it?
Yep, on Highway 90, off of Highway 90.
Yeah, I think it's
By
close.
Boys Village Road.
There you go. All right, we got a motion by Mr. Geary, second by Mr. Barty to condemn or remove in 30 days. Is there any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. 1H, 3528 Hurd Road in Lake Charles. Is there anyone in the audience to speak on 1H, 3528 Hurd Road in Lake Charles? Got a motion by Mr. Abshire, second by Mr. Barty to condemn and remove in 30 days. Is there any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. 1I, 218 West Abear Road in Lake Charles.
Move to condemn.
Is there anyone in the audience here to speak on 1I, 218 West Abear Road in Lake Charles? I got a motion by Mr. Hayes, second by Mr. Richard to condemn and remove in 30 days. Is there any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. 1J, 9242 Gulf Highway, Lake Charles. Is there anyone in the audience here to speak on 9242 Gulf Highway? Got a motion by Mr. Burley, second by Mr. Barty. Is there any discussion? That was to condemn and remove in 30 days. Any discussion, any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. 1K, 105 Hereford Road
to
and
condemn.
Hereford Drive and Topsy. Is there anyone in the audience that's here to speak on 1K, 105 Hereford Drive and Topsy? Got a motion by Mr. Stelly, a second by Mr. Richard to condemn and remove in 30 days. Is there any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. 1L, 1150 Douglas Road in DeQuincy. Is there anyone in the audience here to speak on 1L, 1150 Douglas Road in DeQuincy. Got a motion by Mr. Burley, second by Mr. Anderpont to condemn and remove in 30 days. Is there any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. 1M, 137 Big Woods, Stark Road in Starks. Is there anyone in the audience here to speak on 1M, 137 Big Woods, Starks Road in Starks? Got a motion by Mr. Burley, second by Mr. Barty to condemn and remove in 30 days. Is there any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. 1N, 1961 Burkholder Road in Carlos. Is there anyone in the audience here to speak on 1N, 1961 Burkholder Road in Carlos? Got a motion by Mr. Bear, second by Mr. Tremonti to condemn and remove in 30 days. Is there any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. 1O,
Move to defer for 30 days.
5168.
Second.
Is that L.A. Little Road? It is, okay. We don't have periods, so I wasn't sure. In Carlos, is there anyone in the audience here to speak on 1O 5168 L.A. Little Road in Carlos? Got a motion by Mr. Bear, second by Mr. Tamani to defer for 30 days. You messed up the whole rhythm of this thing.
Believe me.
But it's okay.
Believe me. It wasn't his fault.
So we're going to defer for 30 days. Is there any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. 1P, 4116 Sherry Street in Carlos.
Second.
Is there anyone in the audience here to speak on 1P, 4116 Sherry Street in Carlos? Got a motion by Mr. Bear, second by Mr. Tremonti to condemn and remove in 30 days. Is there any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. 1Q,
Move to condemn.
202 East Jim Pickens Road in Sulphur. Is there anyone in the audience here to speak on 1Q, 202 East Jim Pickens Road in Sulphur? Got a motion by Mr. Anderpont and a second by Mr. Abshire to condemn and remove in 30 days. Is there any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Let's see, Ms. Fontenot, let me find your number on here. 3B. There you go. Presentation of the annual comprehensive finance report for the year ended December 31st, 2022. Ms. Fontenot.
Thank you. It would seem like each year this document, preparation of this document would go a little bit easier, but unfortunately that hasn't been our experience. As you know, we have over 150 individual funds that we convert the cash basis information into the document we're presenting to you tonight. We have just about every type of fund that a governmental entity could have. And then we address all of the accounting and auditing issues that pretty much every entity will address as well. I feel like our finance team has stepped up and they put in thousands of hours to get to where we are tonight. And that team is led by Kyle Judish and supported by our financial service managers, Judy Hewlett, Mike Hibbing, and Lynette Torrens. Our other accounting personnel who've put in so many hours are Carrie Harmon, Sutton Farmer, Nicole Leach, Austin Leger, and Lynette Monteith. And I just want to take a moment just to thank them for the dedication they've put in over these past 3 or 4 months, a lot of overtime, to fulfill this particular duty that finance is required to do and provide to you high-quality financial statements that you're going to review and hear about tonight. As always, we have hired McElroy, Quirk, and Birch to do our annual audit. Their team of auditors is always a pleasure to work with. Tonight, we have the audit director, Jason Guillory, here to present his findings to us and answer any of the questions that you may have for the audit. So I'm going to ask Jason to come to the podium.
Mr. Gary, if you would, please state your name and address for the record, please.
Jason Guillory, 800 Kirby Street. Thank you for having me tonight. I am here to present the financial report for December 31st, 2022. You should have received 3 separate documents as part of your packets. We have the, as Ms. Fondo just mentioned, the annual comprehensive financial report, which is a very large document prepared by your finance department, a slightly smaller compliance report, which my office prepares, and then the third document is just a small staple agreed upon procedures report. I will briefly touch on these 3 documents and be available for any questions when I finish. We have issued our report, which is the purpose of the audit, is to issue an opinion on the financial statements, and our opinion is found on page 1 of the financial section of the ACFR. Our opinion is an unmodified or clean opinion, so we feel that the financial statements presented are fairly stated in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. There was one small modification to the auditor's report this year, which I'm sure all the accounting nerds out there will be really excited about, is we have what's called an emphasis of a matter paragraph. This is required where we have a significant new accounting principle, which I'm sure added to some of the headache to the finance department as we implemented GASB 87, which is a new pronouncement on accounting for leases. And we'll get into the technicals, but it added some significant changes to the financial statements in how we account for all of the both previously operating leases as well as our capital leases. The next thing I'll turn your attention to is found in the introductory section, Roman numeral 9, which is the Certificate of Achievement and Excellence in Financial Reporting for the last year's ACFR. This was the 31st consecutive year which the police jury has received the highest honor in financial reporting, and this report, which we are presenting tonight, will be submitted for consideration of the award again this year. Just to make just a few very brief financial highlights, as I'm sure you've already been briefed in previous meetings, the police jury's total net position for 2022 increased almost $74 million. That means that the total revenues for the police jury exceeded its total expenditures by $74 million, and that added to the total net position of the police jury, which now accumulates up to $1.2 billion. During 2022, the parish saw an increase in revenues of about $31 million. That was primarily relating to operating grants and primarily related to the FEMA disaster grant. During the current year, the police jury received $120.7 million in FEMA disaster assistance grants and accrued an additional $36.8 million to be collected in subsequent years. There were a couple other revenue increases. There was some insurance proceeds that were collected related to previous disasters and property damage, which increased our charges for services by about $14 million. And then property taxes increased by $5.4 million related to increased assessed valuations of the parish's property. Corresponding with the revenue increase, we saw an increase in expenditures. Total expenditures increased by $75 million. Almost all of that, $63 million, was found in the Public Works Department. And so this is where we look at the lateral drainage, drainage lateral debris removal fund and the expenditures associated with those efforts. So then turning our attention to page 22 of the ACFR, you have the balance sheet of governmental funds. These are all of the major funds. As Kelly said, you have about 150 total funds, but there are only a certain number that meet the criteria of major funds. The only thing I want to draw your attention to there is that we have 2 new major funds, or 2 funds that have been elevated to a major level. One is related to the Drainage Lateral Cleanup Fund, and the other is the Calcasieu Parish Library Fund. And there's some specific accounting rules that govern whether or not a fund is considered major for presentation purposes. And then finally, on pages 29 through 33, we have the budget to actual information. This information is presented for the general fund and major special revenue funds, both so that you can see your performance as compared to the adopted budget, and also to demonstrate compliance with state law for budgets and actual information. That concludes my ACFR reporting. In turning to the green binder, which is the supplementary compliance report, we issue 2 reports within this binder. One is for internal control and compliance over laws and regulations for the government as a whole, and the second is over internal control and compliance specifically with federal programs. This is also known as the single audit, okay? And in those reports, we reference the findings that are found on pages 29 through 36 in the report. I'm just going to briefly give you an overview of the findings. I'm not going to go into detail on each individual finding. We had 2 findings related to 2 separate small water districts related to the lack of segregation of duties. In both of those instances, they have 1 full-time clerical employee and 1 part-time. That's simply not enough staff to adequately segregate duties. So that is a repeat finding from prior years and one that will probably be continuing as long as those districts are being reported. We also had 2 findings related to one of those water districts that were prior year findings that continued to this year. One's related to late remittance of sales taxes, and one's related to estimated water billings as opposed to actual water billings. Both of those situations were 2021 issues that carried into 2022, but were resolved during 2022. So there's still findings in 2022, but we do not expect them to be findings in 2023. We had 2 findings regarding 2 different fire districts, both of them related to weaknesses in timekeeping and record keeping at those individual district offices. As you can imagine, they're very small district offices and they have some fairly weak controls in certain areas, and we noted a couple of those at both of those districts. We had 1 finding related to a recreation district of a potential bid law violation, which we have described at length on page 34. And then we had 1 finding related to the parish's WIOA program. The grant program has a specific earmarking requirement, which means that you have to, of the expenditures that you have to spend a certain percentage on defined activities. And in this situation, all of the money that was spent on eligible expenditures. But the allocation was just, there's a 20% requirement for on-the-job training expenses, and more was spent on education as opposed to on-the-job training. And so that was the finding that we had on the WIOA. And then also within the Green Book, we have the schedule of expenditures of federal awards, or the CFA, which shows all of the federal awards expended by the parish. On page 18, you'll see the total for the primary government, the police jury as a whole, is $165 million and change. It's a lot of change. And the component units, which can be found on page 23, expended about $5 million of federal awards. And as we were last year, we have also presented a report for the agreed-upon procedures which are required by the Louisiana Legislative Auditor's Office, and we're pleased to report that for the 2nd consecutive year, we have no exceptions to any of those procedures. I'd also like to take the opportunity to thank Ms. Kelly Fontenot and her entire finance staff for all of their assistance with us during the audit. It is a long process, and this is quite an undertaking with the ACFR, which they do a fantastic job. And I'd like to thank you guys as the police sheriff for allowing us to serve as your auditors. And with that, I'm open for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Geary. Are there any questions for Mr. Geary by any of the jurors? I'm sure we have your phone number. They will be contacting you. Last chance. Thank you, Mr. Geary.
Thank you.
That's what we're looking for. Mr. Barris just made a motion to adjourn. We got a second? There we go. We're adjourned.